My name is Tracy Hill, and I'm the publisher of Silver Sage Magazine. And today we're doing a three-part series, and today is the first part of the three-part series for Edward Jones. And Jennifer Ceneviva, a financial advisor with Edward Jones, is going to help our Silver Sagers out with some really good financial advice. So Jennifer Ceneviva, thank you so much for being on our show. Bienvenidos.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Excellent. So you and I talked about doing a three-part series. The first part we talked about was retirement, planning for retirement. The second part was
insurance for all ages
needs. And the third was sort of paying for college and those kinds of debts that Silver Sagers might have for their family members.
Exactly.
Okay, excellent. So today we're going to focus on planning for retirement, which probably most people don't do enough of.
That is very true. And it's a very broad topic. There's a lot of moving parts to it.
So where do we start?
I guess the best part is to start where a lot of people forget to do that. It's really, to take a moment and think about what retirement really means to you. Does it mean, some people say, well, I don't really want to quit working. I want to quit working in the corporate world. Mm-hmm. And then I want to go volunteer or work doing something that I love to do, or is it traveling around the world, or is it the little cabin in the woods and I don't want to talk to another person for a very long time. So really just trying to see what is your destination for retirement. What does it mean to you? So is a good place to start.
So that's interesting. I never would have thought of it that way. I think most people, and I'm gonna say that because I think I'm a typical average person. Mm-hmm. I think most people think about retirement, all they think about is how much money do I need? But I don't think they think about the end game. How do I want to live my life? And therefore, how much money do I need to live it in the manner in which I want?
Correct. So like you wouldn't start a trip and, get your GPS out and not tell it where you're going.
Interesting. I love that. Our audience is 40 years plus. So we have, sextarians, octogenarians, nanogenarians.
Right.
But thinking about the average, person who's 40 plus, when do most people start thinking about retirement?
Unfortunately, a lot of people don't start thinking about it until their late 40s, maybe in their 50s, when it starts to become sort of a reality. Like when you're in your 20s and 30s, I may say, well, that's really 40 years away. And they just go, well, I don't need to think about that. But they're in the beautiful position to think about that. So,
especially, I think in our society today, with everything is so techno and so immediate gratification, that young people don't think about, it's just so far away from them that they can't even grasp, wow, I need to think about this today for tomorrow.
Well, exactly. I mean, when you're younger, the biggest asset you have is time. You have time is on your side. And
the wealth that you need.
Exactly. So you have to put away a lot less a year, because you have such a long period of time, and that money has a chance to compound and grow over time. So it's the time value of money. So assuming you're now in your 40s and you're saying, okay, well, now I need to start thinking about planning for retirement. In the past, you have a 401k at work. So there's some savings that's gotten started, but you really haven't then narrowed it down. So you said, well, I'm headed in that direction, but I don't really know where I'm going yet. And am I on the right course? And that's when a lot of people come in and see me. They might be in their mid 40s, maybe getting into their 50s, and they do have retirement savings. But again, they're thinking they need to accumulate this huge bucket of money, when again, we haven't even peeled it out as to what does this all look like? What do you want to do? What kind of income do you need to have? What income sources do you already have? So that's the second part that we do, is when you're programming that GPS, you have to tell it where you're going, but you have to tell it where you're starting from too.
Right. And I think that's hard for people to figure out. I know that I recently had a conversation with my mother, who said, because I was worried about my retirement fund. She said to me, well, when I was your age, I had about what you had, but now she's 80 and she said, she's got double that or more. So she said that it does grow exponentially over time. So I thought to myself, yeah, sure, Mom, but hoping she's right, because if not, I'm in deep doo-doo.
Exactly. So, I mean, again, that is the time value of money. I mean, if it is in there growing and you have everything is reinvesting and it's buying more shares, I mean, it's just growing on itself, and it just really does take off. And hopefully that's the goal.
So what are some of the questions that you would ask someone if they came into Edward Jones' office and they talked to you and said, Jennifer, I want to retire when I'm 65 or 70 or whatever. Where do you start? What questions do you start asking?
The first thing we start with was, okay, what have you done to prepare for retirement to date? So
as in financially, you mean?
As in financially. So, once they tell me, okay, I want to retire at 65, and I'll say, okay, great. And we might talk a little bit about, again, what does that look like to you? They might say, I want to retire at 65 and I want to travel the world for 5 years. Well, we're going to have to figure that into the whole mix. But then we really start breaking down, okay, where are you now? Because we really need to assess, and we always reassess, what's your current situation. So what kind of 401ks do you have? Do you have IRAs? Do you have Roth IRAs? Do you have, are you currently contributing? A lot of people, you find that they're like, well.
What's the big difference between, because I hear the terminology a lot, an IRA, a Roth IRA, a Roth, or what was the other one you said?
A 401k.
401k. So what's the difference between those three?
I think the best way to describe it is to talk to them about their tax status. So you have tax deferred accounts, which means you put in either pre-tax money or it's money that you may be getting a tax deduction. So you have a tax benefit now. That money then grows tax deferred. You don't pay taxes along the way.
Right.
But when you take the money out of the account, it's taxed as income. So that would be like your 401k, which is at work, a 403b, which would be at work, or your traditional IRA, which you would set up with a financial institution online, at the bank, or with a financial advisor like myself. So, and they all have different contribution limits.
And most 403bs are with educational institutions?
Educational institutions, charitable institutions, sometimes hospitals will have a 403b. It just, when we say 401k, 403b, it's really just referring to its number in the tax code.
Okay.
It's just an easy way to break it down. So those would be sort of your tax deferred accounts. A Roth IRA, you set up, it has no tax advantage today because it's post-tax money. But that money grows and then comes out tax-free as long as you follow all the rules. So if it's meant for retirement and you take it out at retirement, it's tax-free at retirement. It's just there's no tax advantage today.
Right. I read somewhere, because I read a lot for what I do, and I read somewhere, I can't remember where it was, but I read somewhere that most people, or some staggering statistic, people don't contribute to their matching retirement fund thing for their employers. So why would you not do this? Like, I don't understand.
Well, and I think it comes down to something that I was always told starting in my 20s was pay yourself first.
Oh my God, that's exactly what I learned. Exactly the exact same thing. Pay yourself first. That's so funny you say
Pay yourself first. But when I was in my 20s and I was looking at, well, here's my bills, here's my income, I don't have enough money to pay, I was like, how do you do that? Well, an easy way to do that is in your 401k. And if you're not contributing now, so you're not getting your match if your employer matches, start with a percentage and then raise it a percentage a year. Because instead of taking the whole lump out at one time, where, you do feel the pinch in your paycheck.
Right.
But a little bit at a time, you don't even notice. You really don't.
I would say, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I would say if you're not contributing to your 401k or retirement every year, shame on you.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you are missing out on matching dollars, you're leaving money on the table.
Right. Absolutely. I have young kids. Well, they're adults, they're tax-paying citizens, so they're not really young anymore. But I make sure all my, kids are doing that because they do get matching funds. And I say, you
Mhm.
absolutely, it's free money. It's literally free money.
Right. So at least do that. And
Right.
most retirement plans are set up now that they might have target date funds. So if you're younger, it's going to be a little bit more aggressive. As you get closer to retirement, it'll get more conservative. They've taken a lot of the guesswork out of how to invest that money in your 401k and
Right.
have made it much easier for people to save for retirement without going, well, I don't know what these funds are.
About how long does it take a person or a couple to come in and have this conversation with you in terms of a retirement assessment for them? Like what should they plan if they come down here to Bethlehem and meet with you? How much time do you expect to spend with them?
We usually keep our appointments to an hour because I find nobody really has an attention span longer than that. You start to glaze over and we're like, we're done.
Right.
But I usually find we can get everything done that we need to do. It usually takes about 2 appointments. So
Okay.
the first appointment really is to sit and talk. And again, answer those first couple of questions and really gather the where you are now. And then they'll go home and I'll take the stack of stuff and all of my notes. And that's when we really put it all, into the computer and run our assessments and see where we are and what we can do. They'll come back and then we'll discuss, okay, you're on track, you're not on track. I have a few wonderful clients. I'm like, you are so far ahead of the game. It's fantastic. Keep doing what you're doing.
Right.
So that's where we really sit down and say, okay, well, can you get there? That's a big question, and how do we do that? And we lay out a plan at that point and then we also figure out how are we going to keep them on track? How often do we need to meet to make sure that everything's still going the way we want it to go? Has anything changed? Have we taken on new debt? Are our investments performing or not performing?
Right.
How's the 401k doing? Did the company stop matching? There's all those variables that we always have to keep track on and always reassess.
Right.
That first step of where are we?
Okay. I think we have time for one more question, and that is, from the psychological perspective, being a psychologist, but also from, the Silver Sager perspective, what I often see with my peers is that we have parents who are getting older, and many parents are having dementia, and that's really going up on the rise and stuff. And one thing that I guess it's like, I tried to tell my friends, don't wait until your parent is full-blown dementia before you have to help with finances, but kind of be part of the process. Like, see if you can be a family member that you super trust, where, that you could be co-signers or maybe double signers or something, whatever it's called. Because also there's a lot of scams out there. And I worry, the new scam is that someone calls you and they say, can you hear me? And you say, yes. And now they have your voice saying yes. And then they somehow use that to steal all your money somehow. So how do you help Silver Sager clients manage them, but also their parents, if their parents are getting, in their 80s and 90s and beyond, so that A, their money is protected from scammers, and B, their money is protected from them, doing silly things that they don't know that they're doing because they're not thinking.
Right. Well, and it really depends on how willing their parents are to work with their children. We find a lot with the older generation that you don't talk about money.
No.
You talk about your will and your estate and things like that. But for my older clients, I do try to encourage, make sure that you have a power of attorney set up. And especially for those kids who maybe, when I say kids, our age, who have older parents.
We are adults.
We are adults, but we are somebody's child.
Right.
But if they can have that conversation with their parents, and maybe if their parents don't want to necessarily give up control of the account as far as having maybe a co-signer or something like that, but making sure that, hey, mom and dad, it's really important if something happens to you, not necessarily if you die because there's a will and the state will sort it out, but if you become incapacitated, who is going to manage your money? Who can make decisions for you? Is that set up in writing? And it's not always the older child.
Right. Right. And so you all at Edward Jones would help facilitate that conversation.
Absolutely.
Multi-generational conversation, because I think that's really important. And I think it's a big part of retirement as well, because, the kids, meaning you and I, are the 50s and, the 40s and 50s. We want our parents to stay healthy and live a long life, but we also want them to be financially stable doing
right.
It. And, I just hear every day of another person who was scammed out of some thousands and thousands of money. And I just wish that they would have talked to their kids,
and said something.
Hey, I got a phone call, and what do you think? And I'll say, no, don't return that.
No, exactly. And so it's so important that, and I would say this for any part of the Silver Sagers, if you haven't had your will and your power of attorney and your medical power of attorney drawn up or reviewed, because some people say, well, I had my will done, but that was 20 years ago.
Right.
Go to an attorney and have those documents reviewed or have them written up.
Right. And a health proxy is part of that as well. Yeah.
It absolutely. Because again, the biggest question isn't this if you pass away, because again, if you don't have a will, somebody will get your stuff.
Right.
But if you become incapacitated, who can speak for you?
Correct.
Who can, because if they call and I have somebody's account and they're incapacitated and they don't have a power of attorney, and somebody calls and says, well, I need money out of mom's account, and I'll go, what account?
Right.
I can't talk to them.
Right. So you have those rules of confidentiality.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So it's so important that they have that discussion with their parents. Now, their parents, again, nobody can make their parents behave and cooperate.
Right.
But maybe if you feel like the parents are reluctant to talk about it, it's something that we as Silver Sagers need to be able to bring that topic up with them.
Right.
And make sure that the planning's been done, and where do I find the stuff?
Right. And I think a financial advisor is a perfect person to help facilitate that conversation.
Absolutely. And oftentimes we even sit in on the appointment with the attorney, maybe even with the CPA, and we'll all work together with the family to make sure we're doing what's best. As you said, your fiance is a CPA. He sees things from a different angle than I do.
Right.
And the attorney is going to see it from a different angle. So when we can all work together as a team, it's really powerful for clients.
Right. Well, Jennifer Ceneviva from Edward Jones, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time. Look forward to our part 2 and part 3. I know you're a Silver Sager, so
I am.
Thank you for being a Silver Sager and being on our show today. And I will see you soon.
I will see you soon. Thank you so much for having me.